back, everybody, to the Positive Mindset podcast with me, Matt Stillwell. We're into series 2. Thank you for downloading previous episodes. These ones are interviews with some really interesting people, so I hope you enjoy. Today's episode is with Coach Reed Maltbie. Who's Coach Reed, Matt? I hear you cry. Well, Coach Reed has well over 30 years experience in the coaching world, from all kinds of different disciplines, and I'm talking football or soccer, hockey, sailing, golf, swimming, lacrosse, to name just a few. So his insights into motivation, into how to get the best out of people are really, really interesting, really, really powerful. And a lot of that is reflected in his brand new book, The Spartan Mindset. And I'll put a link in the description for you to grab yourself a copy of that. The Spartan Mindset is all about the words we use to motivate, the power of language, and how we can get the best out of people. It's a great book. Again, I'd highly recommend it. Our conversation took place on the 19th of April, 2023. So sit back and enjoy my chat with the brilliant Coach Reed Maltbie. So welcome back to the Positive Mindset podcast. We are into series 2, interviews with some brilliant people. And today I am delighted to have Coach Reed Maltbie with me to talk about all things coaching. How are you, Reed?
I'm doing very well. It's great to chat with you.
Good. Lovely to see you. Let's get straight into it. I wanted to first of all talk a little bit about you, but I guess by way of an introduction, if you wouldn't mind. How would you describe yourself and what you do?
I am a coach by trade. And right now, a lot of what I do is I either coach coaches or I coach other leaders. So I tend to say I develop leaders who transform lives. My goal is to work with people to help them create better environments for the people they lead, so that they are achieving peak performance more frequently, more consistently. And I've recently started doing a lot more work in entrepreneurship and business, which is great because a lot of organizations see themselves as teams and see themselves as those corporate athletes. And so we're seeing some really good crossovers between sport and business. But yeah, when it comes down to it, I develop leaders who transform lives.
This podcast is all about mindset. It's all about positive mindset, as far as I'm concerned. And I approach it from an angle of golf, just because golf is a passion of mine. But the truth of the matter is, as you will attest and you will know, the stuff that we talk about in sport and in golf, in my particular example, feeds into and generates in every part of our life. So in terms of the phrase positive mindset, what does that mean to you, and how has it perhaps impacted your life and the way you coach?
Firstly, I would totally agree with you. I think that there's so much crossover, and so many times you can stand in front of a group of people and say they may be in sailing, and I may know nothing about sailing, but what we'll talk about today will transcend that. And positive mindset transcends sports. And for me, it's not just going around saying, oh, everything will be okay, or that, the toxic positivity that people talk about. It's having a mindset. It's having a growth mindset, a positive mindset. Whether I'm standing in front of a room of sailors talking to them and I don't know anything about sailing, which I did in the first time I ever spoke with them. But I told them, I said, the stuff we'll talk about, you'll take notes and you'll walk away and you'll say, oh my gosh, this works in my sport, even though this guy knew nothing about sailing. And that was the first piece of feedback I got from that conference that I'm alluding to, was the one person said, you're right, this guy knows nothing about sailing, but I did learn something. So the concept of positive mindset, it has nothing to do with sports. It's just how we live our life. It's the framework in which we view our life. And for me, it's not just that toxic positivity of, oh, everything's going to be all right, everything's going to be okay, and I'll just keep hoping that things will work out. Positive mindset is there's a piece of resilience in there, the ability to bounce back from adversity. There's the adaptation of being able to be stuck in a suck and know that you've got the tools and resources, or at least you have the wherewithal to get yourself through it. There's innovation and creativity. So it's all these pieces of the puzzle of approaching the world in a way that I am going to achieve peak performance. I'm going to work at my very best. I'm going to use the tools and resources I need. If I can't get through something, I'll go and find more tools and resources, and I'll get to the other side. That's, for me, is positive mindset. So it's more about overcoming than it is about feeling good about things at all time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And the idea of growth mindset, as you already said, this thing that we hear a lot, learn from your mistakes, and it's okay to fail. And the problem the challenge I have found is that there are people out there who haven't figured out how to do that. So it's very much well, it's all good and well you telling me that it's okay to fail, but I feel really bad if I fail. How am I gonna grow from that? And I think that's probably your job and other coaches' jobs to try and open that up. Would you say?
Yes, it depends on, I think there are some cultural pieces, like what sport you grew up in, or what group of people you grew up hanging out with. And I think there's some nurture pieces in there, and maybe some nature, where there is definitely a nature piece. If we're faced with failure, if we're faced with threat, we will go into our amygdala, we will go into our lizard brain. It's natural. And those reactions are usually seeking the negativity in our environment. So people like coaches that come along and work with people, typically what we're trying to do is we're trying to reframe that, like you said, move them away from what they instinctually want to move to. So if they go into a fight, flight, or freeze mode, we're trying to work with them to stay in that logical part of the brain, in the frontal lobe, and keep them thinking and analyzing through things, asking questions like, well, why did you feel that way? How would you solve it? And start to get them into a problem solving mode, because obstacles are obstacles. And as Ryan Holiday has quipped, based upon the Stoics, sometimes the obstacle is the way. So sometimes, even though it sucks to fail, that's the only way through, is to get better, is to learn the other side. And so the idea for a coach is to shift their mindset of not saying, oh, I'm a failure, but saying, oh, this is challenging and this is going to make me better. So I'm okay with this challenge. I'm like, okay to accept this challenge. And what's going to happen is I'm going to improve through it.
So looking at the potential failure, in inverted commas, from a curious mindset, from a curious point of view. I always talk about, bearing in mind I play golf, but the one I always come back to with my clients is, the ball may be on the fairway, but it may be in a terrible, terrible lie. So what do you do about that? Some of us may look at that in anger, in frustration, the world's against me. Now my game's out the window. Whereas how would it feel if you approach that from a curious point of view? I wonder how this lie will affect my shot. I wonder what this will do. And then what will be. You do your setup, you prepare properly, and you take action from that. And curiosity is a big one.
It's huge. And I'm glad you used that word, because Ted Lasso has now made that famous quote,
yes.
Curious, not judgmental. And it's all over the internet, but it's like, yes, that's exactly it. When I was in undergrad, I got into Zen Buddhism. And so I took 3 or 4 courses on it. I'm just fascinated with the philosophy and the mindset and the way of life. And one of my professors had studied in Eastern religion, had been embedded in an ashram or in a temple, working with a group of monks. And so when he would talk about approaching your emotions and the concept of meditation with emotions and stuff and being Zen, he would walk us through an exercise, and he'd say things like, oh, there's a little anger and it's going by, but oh, and there's some sadness and I can see it. And I used to laugh, because I was like, it seems so disruptive to say it that way. But now that I look at it, that's really the best way to say it to athletes and performers. Anybody in a high stress situation is, yes, there goes anger. There goes sadness. My ball is lying in a really bad lie in the middle of the fairway. There goes the anger. But that's okay. It's going to pass by, because what I do see is that I'm in the middle of the fairway. And for me, I'm high-fiving my wife, because I'm usually over in the woods. So
that's brilliant. I've never thought of it that way. I've always thought of it as take yourself into a third person. We talk a lot about if you're in a traffic jam, and road rage is no good, but we all perhaps get a little bit frustrated in traffic. There's that thing that you can kind of go, if you have the awareness, which I think is what you're kind of saying, if you have the self-awareness to pick yourself up and say, oh, I wonder why I've got upset about this. We can't go anywhere. The traffic is done. We're stopped. Why don't we just, I'm back in the here and now. I'm no longer angry about the fact I can't get to a place, or frustrated that I didn't leave early enough because the kids couldn't get their bags ready. It's a curious wondering, I suppose. But anyway, that's great. As I said, your experience is so vast. So this is probably a silly question, but I wondered if you could give us just a quick whistle-stop tour of your experiences from younger years up to now, up to writing the book, which we'll talk about shortly. But just for our listeners, a whistle-stop thing of the kind of stuff you've done over your career.
Sure. So first stop was I was an athlete by trade. I played every sport possible that I could. By mid-high school, I pared down to one single sport, soccer. That was my sport. I started coaching when I was 16, coaching soccer. So I've been coaching for 30 plus years. Really good lesson in coaching, pedagogy, psychology, all the pieces of the puzzle, being both an athlete and a coach at the same time, especially at a young age. So I really got to see the game from both sides of both sides of the touch line. And it changed the way I approached my coaching perspective, because I had more empathy for what was happening. And I also kind of understood, what tools I needed to be a better coach based on who I was as an athlete and what I was seeking. I got my first master's in sports psychology, pretty convinced I was going to be a coach for a living. Then, of course, being an 70s, 80s child, the society smacked me in the face and said, no, you need a college education and you need to go get a real job in the real world with insurance.
Engineer or something. Yeah. Go build something.
Yeah. So I followed the horde of people to the working world and coached on the side. My wife had a what if moment with me early in our marriage where she said, what if you could coach full time? So I went back, got a second master's in early childhood education. And I broke free of that race, the rat race that I had put myself in, and nothing wrong with it, but I wasn't meant to be there, I don't think. And so I started coaching full time. I've been a director of coaching. I've been, technical director. I've been an executive director of clubs. And then in 2015, I did a TEDx on the power of a coach's words, another what if moment from my wife, like, what if you could share your message with the world? And that put me into a different space where I actually started working with other coaches and organizations, all the way up from, a local high school would have me come in and just work with one team to working with national governing bodies, helping them in three main areas: learning, language, and leadership. How are we setting up the learning environments for our people to acquire skills and grow and change? How effective is it? Language, how are we communicating with them and with ourselves, and how are they communicating amongst themselves and on their own, in their own head? So that's psychology piece, language. And then leadership is, how are we as leaders showing up and being, great stewards of the game and great stewards of humankind by developing these people. And so those became the areas that I tend to spend the majority of my time on. And then, as you've read it and mentioned, I have a book that just came out. Actually, yesterday was launch day. I think in the UK it's a few more days, but it's called Spartan Mindset, Mastering the Language of Excellence. And what I've found and where I'm really focused now is language is that the words are that keystone for us. It's the great translator between brain and body. And a lot of times that's where the breakdowns occur, whether it's in leadership, whether it's in learning, whether it's in performance, is how we convey thoughts, or how we, even to ourselves, how we evaluate, analyze, and think things. That language is what's either holding people back or allowing people to succeed.
So your book, which you've alluded to, the Spartan Mindset, is really good. I loved it. The big broad question, you've touched on it. It's about words, but it's obviously bigger than that. It's not just words. It's how powerful words can be. And I have a few questions around words in particular. But what exactly? Again, little whistle stop tour. What exactly is the book about, and what made you want to write it?
So what made me want to write it was I was doing a lot of work on one of my biggest workshops, most asked for workshops, was Warriors Not Winners. And the concept behind the workshop was we'd been creating this win at all costs mentality in youth sports. And you could see it modeled in behaviors in pro athletes and in other areas where it was like this entitlement. And everybody was the enemy, and there was like external blaming and all these pieces going on. And so the workshop was all about shifting that mindset over to, being a warrior, being somebody that shows up and competes every day and competes with ethics. And, so it was layering in values, and it was layering in purpose and all those. And it was based around 5 psychological constructs. Anyway, long story longer, I'm working on that. And I was working on different words that are attached to values that we could teach our athletes that allow them to perform at peak. And I was working on like the different spots of the brain. Like if you use unconditional love, that soothes the amygdala and the fight or flight response goes away. And if you use, and my son was watching me work on this new project and he said, Dad, you should really write a book. And so that was the start, was you should really write a book. We talked about what it should be about. Then the challenge was, okay, let's map it out. Of course, that would take me weeks and weeks and weeks into the research. But the idea was, okay, write it in a month. So after I prepped everything and did all the research and gathered everything and had it, because I'm a note taker. So when I go to do something, I usually have my bullet points in front of me. I had all of that mapped out. I had, gobs of stuff in front of me. I would write every day, just every day. I would, 1,000 words. That's all I'm going to do. I'm going to, the Anne Lamott bird by bird. I'd been reading, by Anne Lamott and, the whole idea of just hone the craft. And so in a month, I wrote this book 5 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. It finally came to fruition almost 5 years, actually 5 years to the day. The day I sent it to be published was the same exact day that I had finished and tweeted out, I just finished writing my book in a month, 40,000 words. So that's how the book came to be. The book is about that language. What I was trying to get at when I was talking about warriors, not winners, and shifting towards this warrior brain or the Spartan brain was that language occurs in the brain. So if it occurs in the brain, then it impacts brain processes. And if brain processes are impacted, it's the software of the sport. So it's going to run the hardware a certain way. So if you're creating malware, writing bad code in the brain, then you're going to have chokes in your performances. You're going to have poor performances. So then it goes down to how are you writing the code in your brain that allows you to perform at peak? And so the book dissects certain words that we use in everyday life that we don't think about that actually either are attached to a memory, trigger a process, create a reset situation, whatever it is, they cause a series of processes to happen. They're like a command prompt. Type in one or two words at the command prompt and the computer runs a bunch of series. Well, that's what certain words are. And so the book is broken into, here are those words. They are power words, words that help us perform better. They're peril words. So there's a group of words in the book that we shouldn't use anymore because they cause poor performance. They can affect our performance negatively. And then there are these transformational words that when used, not only do they create a great performance, but they transform the people in that moment because it's such a powerful word. And so the book, each chapter begins with a story showing how the word has been used at some point in time and how effective it was. It talks a little bit about the science of this is what your brain is doing. This is what your body's doing. This is what you're thinking. This is why it does what it does. And then I finish with some hints and tips for either how to eliminate it from your vernacular or how to add it in even more so it becomes an even more stable word in your vocabulary.
Yeah. It's great. It's really great. Congratulations, because I think the opening part that you talk about the brain and the science of the brain, because you need to kind of explain that, and the way you've just explained it there with malware and with software and for some people the analytics in us that really hits home. And I think there's so many examples in sport, certainly in golf, because it is an interesting game. The game of golf, there's a lot of spare time. There's a lot of time to think, probably too much time to think for some people. And I will come to the question about our own words, our own self-talk and that sort of thing. I'm interested in that, very, very interested in all of that. But it's a great book. There's a phrase I've written down here. It came completely out of it. You talk about words build and code the brain, which is something you've already said. Imprints, memories, feelings, processes, and behaviors. And I'm really interested to know what impact our own self-talk has on us. So I can see and I understand, many of our listeners will understand, if someone is talking to you or someone is using certain language back to you, you may interpret that a certain way and may react. And if you're playing badly, it might knock you. And for some people, it might lift you. I don't know. It depends who you are. But how does our own self-talk affect us?
So I became fascinated by that idea, the exact question you're asking, because and I'm not a neuroscientist, and that's the caveat, is I'm not a neuroscientist. I'm not a brain specialist. So I had to dive into the research and really dig around in it too. And of course I came to it from a psychology perspective, because my undergrad was teamwork dynamics, organizational behavior, psychology. And then of course I got a graduate in sports. So I have to look at it from that, but I became obsessed with that kind of thought that if there's research out there that shows that chronic verbal abuse has the same impact, causes the same damage to the structures of the brain as chronic physical abuse. If that's the case, then that means that the brain doesn't distinguish between words and actions. They're just negative. They're a negative impact. So if that's the case, then does the brain distinguish between whether someone else is saying the word to you or whether you're saying the word? In other words, is the brain just its input? So whether I'm at the computer terminal coding or you, Matt, are at the computer terminal coding, the brain is accepting the input. And so then it becomes down to, if it doesn't distinguish between who's doing the speaking, then my concern is that if we speak negatively to ourselves, it's chronic verbal abuse. Like, our brain is constantly being inundated with negative words. And I know the brain is much more sophisticated, but if you look at AI, if you write bad code into AI and then ask it to do something, AI will carry out the processes. And our brain is shown to be in similar ways. There are certain things. If I say to you, being a former, as a golfer, the smell of fresh cut grass in the morning, I trigger a vision. Like, in your brain, you start picturing out on the golf course, getting ready to tee off, first tee of the day, wet, dewy grass, a little bit of crispness in the air, the thwack of the balls on the driving range. It all comes to life, right? Just a simple phrase. There are certain words in our lives, like we can hear our parents, my mom saying no when I hear the word no sometimes because I was running out in the traffic or I was getting ready to touch a hot stove. So if those words cause such vast processes in the brain, then it leads us to believe that if I speak negatively to myself, my brain is accepting that language. My brain is inputting that code into the software, whether it's me or you saying it to me. So our own voice is probably the most important voice we have as far as forming and creating and organizing our brain. But it's also, most of the time, the most negative. The worst critic, the meanest person, the meanest son of a gun I've ever met in my entire life, verbally, is me. Nobody's ever been meaner to me than me. And so, do I have some issues psychologically? Like, do I have some choke point issues and stuff based on my voice? Yes. As a performer, the things we say to us will cause these choke points as well. So you have to guard your own words as much as you do the words that are coming into your brain from other people.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I love that. The one word, and I was going to ask for some examples in a little while, but the one I always think about on the golf course is don't. And it's the idea, you're standing there, don't go in the water, don't go in the trees, don't go out of bounds. And what happens? The putt, don't leave it short. The number of times you say that, and what do? There's no way you're railing it past the hole. That's coming up short, whether you like it or not. So I am as you probably were, I am fascinated with how that works. I really am.
I do. And you see it even in bigger performances. You'll see an announcer say, oh, they're playing not to lose. That's a don't mentality. Like, don't lose this game, instead of let's go out and win it. Let's get another goal, pad the score a little bit, give us a little cushion. No, it's, oh, don't lose. And you choke. You do.
Yeah. And it's the phrase you've got in the book, speak it, think it, do it. Really sort of bish, bash, bosh.
Yeah. Here's something that's really cool. So when I got into studying positive discipline with Jane Nelson, she's been in that realm for 40 years, and she was a professor by trade working with children. A lot of her work comes from Adler and Dreikers, and it's positive mindset, self-actualization, very language-based. And I think that's why we got along so well. We got so well because we just were two peas in a pod. But one of the things that she used to say is that children don't understand don't. So when you've got a group of children and you're yelling, don't run, their brains can't visualize what don't is. They can see running, but what is don't? Is it a circle with a line through it? Like, what does don't mean? No. So their brain actually can't visualize it. So when you say don't run, they hear run. And so you have to give them an alternative, instead of, like we used to use in soccer shots, instead of saying don't use your hands, we'd say to kids, oh, use your feet. Let me see your feet now. So you give them the alternative thought versus, don't run or don't hit it in the water. It's put this baby right down the middle of the fairway.
Right. The phrase what if, the words what if, so powerful. And again, something else that really resonated with me in my previous life, when I worked for a company, we had a what if wall. This is where you can throw out anything you like. What if we bagged that big client? What if we gave everybody Fridays off? So I always saw it as a positive. I always saw the words what if in the positive sense. What if I start my own business? What if we travel around the world with the kids? Whereas I know a lot of people who look at what if they automatically go to the negative. Well, what if I can't pay my mortgage? What if we can't do something? So it's a negative process. I wondered if you've come across that, and if there's ways that you can get people to turn the negative into the positive, and then whether or not there's a way to get them to actually take action on it.
Yeah. So I did think about that. I put what if in there for me because it was always a positive, powerful phrase, as the story in the book tells, and the story of actually getting the book published as a what if. And I think if I did it differently today, I would actually have put it in the transformational category, because I'm now seeing how much transformation the words what if have caused in my life. I was just writing to somebody yesterday about the fact that, there's been so many what if moments just even the last few years in my life that somebody in my family or me, myself, I was like, what if? So it's always been positive, but it is one of those words like try, because try, I had a coach challenge me that try can be a positive word, and he showed how he uses it in a positive way. So what if can be a negative word. If you've got people who are using what if as a negative, as a peril phrase, the key is to reframe their thinking around that, their mindset around that, and how the other words that they're couching them what if within. So what if is just the phrase, it's the trigger. So if they're saying, what if I do lose all my money in this venture, or what if I fail as a salesperson, or what if, then you need to reframe that and say, what if you don't try? What would the regret feel like if you don't do it? What if you actually make $1 million? And then, what if you move it to the positive? And so I talk a lot about, the word journaling. Like, I don't have to journal my entire day. Dear journal, today I drank coffee 500 times. I just have to write into which is true. I just have to write into my journal those words. What words are popping up throughout my day? Failure, imposter, what if I lose? What if people will laugh at me? What if the book doesn't sell? What if I write all those down? And now you've created a word cloud, and you can see what words pop up the most. And then you start to, because you've given life to these words, because you've written them in a notebook, they now have life, but they're out of your brain. And so sometimes you can look at them and you say, oh my gosh, I thought that. Why would I ever? That's absurd. Why would I ever think that? It's such a horrible thought, or that's so ridiculous. Come on. And so getting it out of your brain and into a journal helps you suddenly see the absurdity in it, or at least see the power it had over you. And you've removed its power. You've pulled it out, like pulling the code out and putting it, quarantining it in some other section of the hard drive. You've pulled it out and you've looked at it, and now you can reframe it. You just got to rewrite it. So now I'm going to start using what if in a positive way. So every time the words what if start to come out of my mouth, I need to think of the positive side of that. And believe it or not, it's sort of like the Bader-Meinhof or confirmation bias sort of syndrome. Is once you've identified the words what if, you notice them more often in your own vocabulary. Like you start to see them everywhere. And so when you notice them, your brain becomes aware. And so you'll say, what if? And your brain will stop and go, what was that directive? Oh yeah, I'm going to say something positive after it. And then the other piece is you find accountability partners. So Matt, you're my accountability partner, and we're on the golf course, and I start my what if language, and I go, what if I hit it in the water? And you go, what was your charge? You said you were going to do something. I was going to make my what ifs positive. So what would be a what if there? That's positive. What if I land this 5 feet from the hole? Bingo. Let's go with that thought. So it's having that, it's becoming aware and intentional with your language. It's writing it down and taking its power away. It's reframing it into something different. And it's having accountability partners who can help you groove that habit.
Really interested, if you're able to give us a couple of real world examples that you've come up with when you're coaching someone. You've given us a couple in this conversation actually, but a couple. I was thinking of the can't and buts versus the whens, and we've already talked about what ifs. But any real world examples?
Yes. So one of the big ones is a lot of times the athletes would say, I can't do this, coach. I can't get the skill. I can't figure it out. And so two things happen. One, they're quitting. They're giving their brains an excuse to stop. And it all starts in the brain. And so it's cutting off the skill pathways, the neural pathways that are that particular skill. And the brain will prune them if we don't work on them. So them stopping them using a can't is fatal for that skill development. And so for me, it was always switching it to a what, like Carol Dweck's yet. You can't yet, but let's work together. I'll come alongside you and we'll do this together until we get it. Or it's in our household, we came up with can't became challenge accepted, no takebacks. And we've been using that over a decade now. Somebody says can't and somebody else goes, oh no, challenge accepted, no takebacks. Everybody loves a good challenge. We've all seen A Christmas Story. If you get double dog dared to stick your tongue on that cold pole, you're going to do it. Well, if your own child at, I think the first time it happened to me was like 10 or 12 years old says to you, oh, challenge accepted, no takebacks, Dad. Well, you're not going to back down. I've got to take that challenge. So
absolutely,
saying can't becomes the pathway to actually having to do the thing. But the key is to provide the scaffolding, the support. You can't just tell somebody, oh, you can do this, you will do this. Not yet. You have to then give them the support. Carol talks about that school in Chicago where they had not yet grades because kids didn't fail. They just were not yet there yet. But then they gave them the resources to get there. They tutored them. They gave them extra homework. They got them into situations where they could learn better so the kids could turn those not yet grades into, D's, C's, B's, or A's.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Negative language is just negative language, and switching it to the positive is an empty gesture. It's futile unless we actually back it up with support. So with athletes, if an athlete said to me, oh, I can't do this, I was usually like, yes, you can, and you will, but I'm going to help you. I'm right here with you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to show you. And then I might pull in another athlete. Peer-assisted learning is a great way for people to learn. That really puts them into that Vygotsky zone of proximal development, where the concept is that there's this zone, that where people can learn, and it's a task isn't so difficult that they need outside help or else they can't finish it like completely. Like somebody has to do it for them. But a task isn't so easy that they're like, this is boring, I can do that automatically. They're sort of in this place where they might need a little bit of assistance, but then they'll grow and learn into it. Peer-assisted learning worked great there. So if an athlete is in a can't kind of mentality, you put somebody with them, another athlete that's maybe got the skill already, to help them learn the skill. Because learning from me as an adult who's accomplished the skill and played the sport at higher levels, sometimes they're like, oh yeah, of course Coach Reed can do the skill. He played in college, or he played there, or he's 956 years old. He's ancient. So of course he can do it. He's Gandalf, whereas like if you put a fellow peer next to him, they're like, oh, so Johnny can do it. Johnny can show me that it's attainable.
Yeah, it's possible. Yes.
Very possible. And it becomes a visual in their head. Flip it to the positive language. I usually used yet or will. You will do this. That's a big one with athletes. Is I'd get athletes come off and we'd debrief, because you can't debrief, especially in a game like football, soccer. You can't debrief them on the field. There's just no way. So when you were going to have meaningful conversations in games, it was when they came off and were sitting next to you on the bench. And then you could say, hey, what happened out there? Oh, this happened. Why do you think it went that way? Oh, because of this, this, and this. What would you do differently next time? Oh, I do this differently, coach. And typically we'll go try that. But try is an excuse word. Try means, oh, I gave it my best. Like I tried to come to your kid's second birthday party this weekend, just didn't make it. I gave it my best. So I started switching that word to will with athletes. No, you will. Let's go out. You will do this next time you get that chance, and let me know how it went. Let's see what it does. And so you layer in, you used what if, when you do this, how will that feel when this is accomplished? And that changes that uncertainty of the very first chapter. If I someday were this, no, not if, because when your language isn't certain, your outcomes aren't. When you accomplish this, because the beauty of a word like when as a positive word is it's triggering a visualization beyond that moment. So if you say to somebody, when you break the 4-minute mile, or when you're able to start hitting balls into the green in regulation, how would that feel? They can see themselves starting to hit shots into the green, and they can see themselves actually scoring well. But more importantly, it takes that vision even further, because you're like, what would that feel like when you do this? Then they can start to attach emotions and attach other behaviors around it. Like now there's an intentionality between their actions, because they have this whole visual world that they've created of this goal and this dream that at one point was just this vague concept of, what if I could shoot a 70 in golf? And now you're saying when you do, and you're prepping their brain to think about when you shoot 70s, what would that look like? What would you be doing differently? What kind of shots would you hit? What kind of skills would you need? And they're building out that world. And when you build a world, it's so much easier than, if you build it, they will come, right?
Yeah.
Cliche, but if you're building that world, it's so much easier than to attain it, because you have a roadmap, a blueprint for what you want.
Absolutely. I heard a fantastic, you may already know this story, and I forget what book it was in, so forgive me, but it was a story of high school basketball, or perhaps college basketball, but I think it was high school basketball, and it was almost the end of the game. Someone was fouled, and they took a timeout. So it was going to be a free throw. They were losing, they were down by 1, and they had 2 free throws, and then it was a timeout. So the coach on the losing team knows he's got a free throw to win the game, basically, because there's a couple of seconds left. So as the kids are coming off the court, he's got a couple of seconds now to decide how he's going to approach this. And it was this way up, or the story was between the coach, who could just grab the kid who's going to take the free throw and say to him, right, okay, just remember your technique, remember what we've been training for, remember, the line, remember the flick of the wrist, hit the backboard, whatever, all those things. Whereas what he said when the kids all came back in was he didn't even almost acknowledge the kid who was going to take the free throw, because he knew that kid was going to be nervous as hell, right? He's going to be worried. He's going to be probably quite anxious, but pent up. He doesn't need the coach talking about him. He's practiced that shot 100 times. He doesn't need the coach telling him what to do. So instead, the coach would take the group and would kind of go, right, to coin your phrase, when we score this free throw, I want us back in our defensive shape. That's all I want to see. Okay, back into defensive shape. Okay, go guys. Didn't acknowledge it. The kid was kind of, oh, okay, great, right, just do my job. And that rung a bell when you said about when. Very, very positive language and very interesting. I need to find out who said that, but you may know that story already. But yeah.
Such a great story, right? The basketball coach handles so well, because what can you say that's actually at that moment, if you don't have to say anything, if you can just convey a lot of power and just a high five or fist bump, or when we get this free, talking to the rest, like what a powerful moment. Because what can you say to somebody? Like their brain's already running at 1,000 miles an hour. Maybe the one thing you could do is ground them in the moment. Like, hey, look me in the eyes. We're here.
Yeah, breathe.
Yeah, we're right here.
Look around
in this moment. Yeah, breathe and quiet the mechanism and go do your thing.
Yeah.
Or the Mark Richt. Listen, I love you whether you make the shot or not. Making the shot doesn't change how I feel about you. Like, you should be so proud of how far you've come. Go do your thing.
Right. I've just got a couple more questions. Obviously we can still talk about the book, but moving away, I wanted to talk about your coaching experience in general. And it was this thing that you've been involved in so many disciplines, and I've had to write some of them down because I would have forgotten, but we're talking soccer, we're talking sailing, we're talking golf, lacrosse, hockey, swimming, and you may not have been, as you've said, a coach specifically, but you've been involved in those disciplines in some manner. I'm interested about first of all, how you switch, and maybe you don't, and I'm kind of teeing you up really, but how you switch your mindset from those disciplines. Maybe you do, maybe you don't, but I'd be interested to know how, and what differences, if any, there are that you find between the mindsets that you get in those sports, in the people that are in those sports, if there is any difference.
So the switch is, I will code switch. I will switch some of the way I talk to try to speak the vernacular of the sport. But typically I just try to show up and be authentically, quote unquote, me, because my biggest thing is I want to, like that US sailing story, I want to convey to them that I'm not an expert in your sport. And some of the sports I've played, some I haven't even played. I never sailed before. I'm not an expert in your sport. However, what we're talking about transcends the sport. I want them to understand the power. I want people to understand the power of what we're discussing, that it transcends sports and moments and people, and it even transcends industries. And so I try to stay in who I am. Where my mindset will shift is I know that to engage people, I've got to speak their language. I have to be in their world. So I do my best to do homework, to enter their world, to know who their athletes are, to know who their heroes are, to know what the phrases are, to know what some of the more rudimentary, easily attained skills are. So I can use those, the terminology, starboard versus port versus, things like that. So I can pepper those into our conversation in our workshop. And then I get you. Because if I walk into a room of Spanish speaking people and I'm at, elementary level Spanish, so you need to slow down and speak really slow and use only words that I've learned, then I'm not going to have a great workshop. Well, it's the same thing when I walk into a room of sailors and I'm not a sailor, is they're speaking Spanish at that point. So I've got to come in with at least armed with enough to know when that they say, well, when I tacked port side, that I'm not going, wait, I'm lost. I can't even
which one's that?
I don't know what it is. Right. So that's where probably the code switch is where I try to become, part of their world. I have to enter their milieu. It's the same thing with children. Tell coaches all the time, if you're going to coach children, you have to enter their world. You've got to get down at eye level, their level, You've got to lower your voice to the same volume level as theirs. You've got to look them in the eyes. You've got to understand the things that get them excited. Like, what video games are they playing? What devices are they using? Because then you can couch your learning in that, Mario's back. So we could probably now teach them, oh, it's like Mario Brothers when he blah, blah, blah. Like, you have to enter their world or you're going to lose them. You have to speak and act the way they do, or they're going to disengage from you. It's the same thing with other sports. I'd show up in another sport. If I walk in and I'm a soccer guy and I speak only in soccer terms, I'm going to lose them. I'm not in their world. Soccer's not their thing. So that's where the code switching and entering the world was where I tried to make otherwise everything else, all the techniques and everything, they stay pretty much genuinely the same. I don't change a whole lot about what the core of what we're working on, because it's transcendental. The other piece of that is, the mindsets are different. Like, getting myself in the mindset of other sports. I did notice that some sports are different. A lot of times the territorial sports, the land grabbing sports like football and American football and other sports where you're gaining ground and losing ground, and those sports combative in a sense, they're almost like a theater of military strategy. Those games typically have a mindset of vanquish the competitor. There's a more Spartan rah, then we shall fight in the shade type of mentality. So that is, you approach it from there. There are other sports they have that competitive fire, but they're a little bit more heady. Like when you're working with cross country, or you're working with sailing, or you're working with I'm trying to think of the dual sport, shooting and skiing.
Not biathlon.
Biathlon. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, okay. When you work with biathlon or triathlon, a lot of those sports, even though they require the same amount of physical and emotional output as a land grab sport, they are much more heady. They're in their head the whole time. And it's a very cerebral sport in that sense. Like, sailing is an extremely cerebral sport. And so you start to see how am I going to work on psychological concepts or performance concepts with a group of people who are the mindset is almost bellicose, right? It's a battling mindset, and that's not a bad thing. It's a battling mindset versus how am I going to work with these people where the mindset's almost like a more serene, cerebral mindset. And so then I will alter how we talk about certain things based on those mindsets of the sports. So I'll try to figure out what the ethos is of that particular sport and feed the ethos, or at least speak to them from the ethos that they understand. I came from bellicose sports. For me, it's the warrior mentality. It's the fighting till you bleed, grass stains, and all of that. Well, that doesn't happen in other sports. They're extremely cerebral. Swimming, for instance, you're never even going to touch the other competitor. So that's an interesting, those sports are interesting because you're trying to stoke that competitive mindset and get them into that high peak motivation, like get them to the edge of Yerkes-Dodson's law, where they're right at the very edge of anxiety and motivation and everything without them caving out. But you have to be careful, because there is no smack in the face that's going to pull them back to reality. Like in a land grab sport, in soccer, I could get myself ramped up and be standing in a tunnel before we go out. Like, and the first smack of the ball, or the first time somebody puts a shoulder into me, the first time I get whacked hard, I'm like brought back to reality. I'm like, now we're playing. Swimmers don't have that. Like, somebody's not going to walk up and smack them before they get in the water. So their anxiety gets way up. And then you have to figure out, how do I get them now to level that so that they can channel it like I would a bellicose sport where, like Mike Tyson says, the first time you get punched in the face, how do we do that from a mental standpoint with those athletes who are in more cerebral or less contact sports? How do you get them so that they can amp themselves up to perform? They get everything, all the processes are in, all the systems are fired up. And now we've got to actually get into a flow state, which requires us almost to slow those engines down a bit.
And I guess, people are different, aren't they? So do you find scenarios where people perform, just even in those serene sports, they perform better if they're amped, and there'll be others who perform better if they're less so?
Yes, I would see it in athletes. You would see these certain athletes who are like, almost banging their head into the locker, like, ooh, yeah, listening to rah-rah music before they go out and, perform. And it's an individual performance. Like, it's nobody else is going against him. My son does that with his cheerleading. Like, he's a weightlifter too. So before cheerleading, he's a competitive cheerer. And before cheerleading competitions, he's like, wants to drive up by himself and listen to his music and get himself, and you could see it on his face when he comes out. He looks like he's going to battle. Like, he is going to war, man. He's got the paint on and everything. And yet some of his teammates are like, I just like to go to a quiet space and do my visualization of my movements, of my runs, and I've seen that with athletes. I've seen athletes completely separate themselves and they've got classical music on or, or something lighter. And they're actually doing visualization of the moves that they're going to do. They're doing visualization of their strokes, or they're doing visualization of the game happening. And that's how they have to do it. So yeah, you do have to honor each athlete's style.
Yeah. Yeah. And then it's go time.
And then it's go time. All of them have that, no matter what your prep style is, all of them have to have that trigger of the go. That there needs to be, we used to do it with our teams. We used to create the white line was the go. So when my team was training, when it was game time, when they stepped across the line onto the playing field from the sideline, it was go time. Like there was no going back. We have crossed the Rubicon, folks. And so you have to have that trigger with your athletes. Like get them up. They have to get themselves prepped in the ways they need to, and you give them the tools for that. And then everybody has to have that one common trigger that says, we are ready. Usually it's the break. Everybody bring it in. That's the break. That's what usually tells people it's time.
I'd love to also hear a little bit about, you've talked a little bit about the process of engaging different mindsets, different people from different disciplines and backgrounds. And I see coaches coaching in terms of the mechanics, like you've said, and how to do mechanically a certain thing, but I don't see it quite so much in terms of the mentality. I'm interested to know how you go about splitting that and how you go about getting your clients, your teams to understand that mindset is important.
One of the things is usually those teams have some kind of value system or purpose. And so first thing I'll do is tap into the value system and purpose, why they're doing what they're doing, why they're out there seeking joy, and get them into that mindset first. And then as far as skill acquisition, it's shifting them to that growth mindset and get a team they want to be, like you said, curious. Like there's nothing better than a curious athlete. And so getting them to curious, like we're going to teach you new skills, and getting them curious to want to learn the skills on their own. So there's an intrinsic motivation to wanting to do that. Like I don't want, from a mechanics perspective, I'm going to fall flat if I make them do skills that they don't inherently want to be doing. If they don't want to be there, if they don't want to learn the game, mom and dad are making me play type mentality. Yeah, so I've got to find, even with those kids, right? You've got to find I know mom and dad are making you play, but what do you love about this game sort of mentality? Like find a thing that gives them joy in the game. And then you use that to layer in these skills. You stoke that curiosity. The growth mindset is not only are you stoking the curiosity, but you're stoking the need for growth and feedback. So an athlete with a growth mindset they're not turning to you for validation. They'll turn to you to say, give me some feedback. That's what you want. You want those athletes that are, because if you give athlete to a non-growth mind, a fixed mindset type of athlete, their head will drop. I did it the other day. I was in my wife's yoga class, and I've been practicing yoga for years now, especially at her classes, but I had taken about a year off. And I'm in her class, and I knew I was out of practice, and we were doing one of the poses that requires us to be up on our back toes, and our heel should be above our back toes. We're up that high, extended. And she comes over and she goes, up on your toes a little bit more, and moves my heel. And she says, there you go. Now bend that back knee just a little bit to activate the hamstring. And she did it. And the first thought was, oh my gosh, how embarrassing. She had to correct my skill. Now these people think I don't know how to do yoga. Like the brain starts going. Yeah. And I was like, wait, no, Reed, no. That is good feedback. You were in the wrong pose. And so even I, at that moment, had a fixed mindset and was like, oh my gosh, I'm being told what to do. This is embarrassing. Versus like a growth mindset is like, gimme. That's great. I want to learn. I want to keep growing. I want to keep getting better. Yeah. So you've got to get them into that. You've got to get your athletes into that mentality that they want the feedback. And you've got to keep them curious. And that's the big one with every athlete is get them curious, like tap into their joy, tap into their values. Why are they here? Why are they doing what they're doing? And then the learning environment is so much easier if you've got these fully engaged growth mindset individuals who are seeking out the learning opportunities and who are hunting down those mistakes to iron the mistakes out of their performances. And then what you become is a guide. You're just guiding them. And you don't even have to give them the answers because they're independent problem solvers. That's the other one for my athletes is I always want to create these independent problem solvers. Like when something happens, what happened? Why do you think it happened? Not, here's why it happened wrong, Matt. Let me show you what to do. Like, I don't do well with that. I have to know in my own brain why it went wrong and create my own visual roadmap for how I correct it. And so you really want you want your athletes being those independent problem solvers. When a problem happens, I'm not going to give them the answers. I'm going to step back and go, you got this. What do you see? Yep. You solve it. What do you got? Try it. You'll do it. Do it. Go ahead. Okay, that one didn't work. What else can we do? You've got to get them in there. So those are the big steps with like the mindset shift with athletes versus just coming in and being very mechanical with them.
And through your whole kind of coaching career, I have no doubt you've had challenges. What have been the biggest challenges and the things on the flip side of that you're most proud of?
Oh, the biggest challenges. See, I love those light bulb moments. So I've never seen working with the athletes as the challenges, because those are just usually the challenge comes in working with other coaches or parents and getting them. That would be my biggest challenge, and getting them to trust that I'm there for the best for their child, and getting them to trust that my process will work. That's where the challenge has always been difficult. It starts with, I've always tried to be very communicative with parents. As a 16-year-old, it's a survival mechanism. Like, I've got to talk to them, and I've got to justify why at 16 I'm coaching their 8-year-old, But the older I got, the more I realized it was so important to continue to communicate with them, because that's where the challenge comes. Because I'll teach something, and then the car ride home from practice, it might get unraveled, or at dinner that night, it might get unraveled by somebody who, I played soccer for a couple of years in high school. So let me give you my, and it's like, and so that was the big key, because I'm like that. Like, I try so hard to keep my mouth shut when my kids are sporting. Like, I was so glad that they both picked volleyball, because it was a sport I did not play competitively. I only played with my dad was a volleyball player. So I only played with my dad and his friends, and I only played like, 2-man beach or something like that. So I know nothing, and it's great because I can't have those car rides or dinner conversations about their skills and unravel anything coaches were. It's always my difficult part. Yeah.
So you can just stay as a coach. You can ask the question still in the car ride home. How did that feel? So that's great. Yeah.
Beginner's mind, right? And become and teach me how you do that. How do you get the spin on the ball? How do you get the top spin to get over? How do you get that? How exactly do you hit the ball? Let me see that again, because that's really difficult. And then they're doing it. So that would be the most difficult part is getting everybody on the same page. And it's the most important thing. I never saw it as dealing with parents. Oh, we got to deal with parents. I used to. There were people I know who would always say that in the industry, and I'm like, well, you're kind of already creating the dichotomy when you talk about dealing with parents, or I've got an organization that's for the parents, and I'm going to show you how to manage these coaches or deal with these coaches. And I'm like, well, it's kind of like I really love those organizations. It's like, we're going to work together. Right?
Yeah, Gordon collaborate.
Yeah, Gordon McClellan with working with parents in sport is so good at creating the collaborative mentality. Like, I'm going to work with your players. I'm going to work with your parents. We're going to all be on the same page because we're one big organization working towards a common goal. That's the mentality I love. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
I love Gordon for that, because he's always been very like, we're all one. And that was the hardest part, was getting the buy-in from everybody involved. The big wins and the victories, and I'd already mentioned it, was those light bulb moments. Like, so many amazing light bulb moments in my career where an athlete suddenly had that moment where they look at you and they go, I got it. I figured it out, coach. Or they do something amazing in a game and they never look at the sidelines, and they're all celebrating. And finally at the last minute, they look over at the sidelines and they go like this, because they're like, they know, you'll know, like, we got it. We solved this equation. Right. And with younger ones, it's constant. It's like a constant stream of light bulb moments when you're working with 4- and 5-year-olds. So those were always my most favorite successes, was a group of 4- or 5-year-olds, watching them light bulb moment. I will tell a quick story. I promise I'll keep.
No, please do.
Probably one of my most exceptional moments in coaching. I was working for Soccer Shots here in San Diego. And as I took a few classes, I was executive director, but I took a few classes of my own to stay in touch with the kids, to keep skills going and all of that. And just because that's what we needed. And there's this one particular school where I'd been working at for about 6 to 8 weeks. The classes only run about that long. So we're right near the end of our time there. And there was this one particular little girl in this, and they were all like I'd go in, sometimes Soccer Shots becomes like a phys ed experience for children. Like, we come in during certain phys ed hours and we do soccer classes with them, but it's their physical functional movement patterns and their socialization and all of that. It's a really great program. So we go into these schools, and I'm in this school, and they use this big concrete area, and it's sort of like in the middle of all of the classrooms on the backside of a church. And so all the classrooms doors face the concrete area where the Soccer Shots occurs. And for 6 to 8 weeks, there's this one particular girl in my class who, the very first day, we taught them to get comfortable with the ball touching different parts of their body so they wouldn't freak out. And so one of the things we did is we put the ball on the ground and they'd roll on their belly. roll on your belly, roll on your belly. They think it's funny too. Roll on your belly, roll on your belly. You know, so they get comfortable because the ball might pop up and hit them there every once in a while. So you imagine, I've taught the kids this. They're all progressing where they're dribbling and they're doing moves and they're shooting now. And this one particular girl who's like 5 years old, because it's 5 and 6 year olds, has every class rolls on her belly.
Just wants to roll on her belly.
Just rolls on her belly. Like right next to me, always comes right next to me and rolls on her belly. Like, and I'm like, so you can imagine, I'm thinking I'm a total failure. Like all of these years that I've been working with kids, all of these years that I've been coaching, all of these degrees that I went and got, and I can't get this one 5-year-old to even care about the sport to do more than roll on her belly. Like she's bored. She's so bored. All she does is roll on her belly. She must just completely loathe coming out to my training sessions, and she hasn't learned a thing. Like I'm a failure. So it's my birthday and I show up at the school that day. And as always, for 20 years, 30 years, I've been coaching on my birthday, try out something. I've never had a day off on my birthday. And I show up and I grabbed all the balls and I'm going down the steps to the back of the school where the concrete is. And those thoughts are going through my head. It's your birthday and you're going to go to this school where you've got this kid who's not learned a thing from you, who doesn't care about you, this at all. Like, Reed, you failed because one kid has not learned a thing and doesn't care about the sport. Like you couldn't get this one child passionate about soccer. She's so bored. She's rolling on a ball. You're a failure on your birthday. This sucks. And I'm not kidding you. That's the mindset. I round the corner as the voice in my head is like, you are horrible, Coach Reed. And I hear this, it's Coach Reed, echo throughout the courtyard, like this guttural, otherworldly voice, like scream out, it's Coach Reed. And I stop and I look, and it's that little girl standing in the doorway of her classroom. The door's open and she's standing there and she's like this. Like she is like stoked to see me. But I mean, it was the deepest. I did not think a kid could yell like that. And I just look at her and I get the field set up and everything. And they're coming out and the teacher comes by and goes, she's like that every week. You're her favorite part of the week. And the tears start rolling. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh. Like to her, that's all she wanted was to be there with me and the other kids on that court with a soccer ball. That was the teacher said she talks about it all the time. That was her favorite time of the week. She draws pictures about it. Like I had no clue that just letting her be her in that moment and do those things, like that was all she needed from me as a coach. Yeah. And that was one of my greatest moments in coaching. What started as you're the worst coach on the planet on your birthday, you suck, Reed, to oh my gosh, Reed, like you're transforming a life and you didn't even know it. Like that's the beauty of coaching. That's all of us need to have those moments as coaches. And what's really cool, what is really amazing is that particular day after she did that, she rolled on her stomach on the ball the whole time. Never changed her tactic.
Fantastic. So fantastic. I mean, I was going to ask you what inspires you, but I think I know. I think I've got a good feel for that. Coach Reed, we are going to have to come to an end very shortly. I've got one more question that I wanted to ask you, but before I do that, what's next for you? What have you? Obviously, the book. Are we going on tour?
Yes, hoping to go on tour. I'm actually doing a few talks this summer, but the book is the start for me. I've got a course coming out called the Spartan Brain, which will dig into 7 scientifically supported values that we can attach to our performance, habits and values that we can attach to our performance that can help shift performance into peak situations. And the idea is that take the language, take it deeper. Like now let's create consistent, sustainable peak performance through the Spartan Brain. And I've got another course that will be coming out in a few months called Mastering the Language. It'll be called the Language of Excellence. And it will take the book to the next level. So the book talks about the words, but as you alluded to at the beginning, and as other people have said, there's so much more. There's tone of voice, there's facial expressions, there's body language. So the Language of Excellence takes that whole universe. It's going to be about 25 modules, all short, that will go into the different channels that we use to communicate, the different phrases and techniques, even down to hints and tips. The course will have hints and tips of, like I had already mentioned, with younger ones, get down to high level and put the sun at their back, not at yours, things like that. And so the goal with the Language of Excellence is to get people to understand, now that you understand how powerful words are, let's make sure that we're putting them in the right frameworks so that they succeed. You mentioned trigger words earlier. Trigger words only work if we put the framework around the trigger word, and the Language of Excellence will teach us how to frame it properly and then how to deliver communicatively in a much more effective way.
Great. That sounds brilliant. Sounds really good. So that'll be available through your website?
Yes, through my website, coachreed.com.
I'll put all of our links in the description, link to your book, link to the YouTube video, the TED Talk video, and any other links you want in there, I'll whack in those. But I wanted to, my final kind of question, what, you may well have more than one, but if you can think of the one key piece of advice for those who want a Spartan mindset, for those out there who are perhaps on the edge of a dream or can't quite unlock something, what would be your one piece of advice?
It's going to sound strange, but it's been working for me. If you speak loudly, people hear. If you speak knowledgeably, people listen. If you speak lovingly, people follow. So if we can shift our language to a more loving language with the people around us, then we're going to be able to lead the people we want to lead in the best way possible. But more importantly, if you switch your language to a loving, gentler language with yourself, you will be amazed at what you can do for your own performance just by having a loving voice. So speak lovingly and people, including yourself, will follow.
Brilliant. That's fantastic. Reed, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. I know you're very busy. I know it was fairly early in your neck of the woods today. So I appreciate your time. Thank you again. And yeah, I will put all the links in the description and keep in touch.
Will do. It's been an absolute joy talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Reed. Fantastic stuff. Welcome back. Thank you so much for your time, Reed. Really, really appreciate that. I know you're a very, very busy man, so thank you so much for that. I thought it was really, really interesting. I felt like we only scratched the surface. I felt like there was a lot more there that we could have got into, but I think the time we spent was brilliant, and hopefully you enjoyed it as well. I'd like to also mention that Reed is very kindly giving away a couple of copies of his book to a couple of very lucky listeners or lucky watchers. So all I ask is, if you'd like to be in with a chance to win that book, The Spartan Mindset, just subscribe to this podcast, leave me a comment, and I will pull out a lucky winner or two and get you a copy of the book. All the information is in the description. Lots of information from social media links to website links. So please do that. All my stuff, if you're interested, is in there as well. So make sure you click that. And obviously, as always, if you'd like to spend a bit of time with me, my voice went funny then, didn't it? That was weird. If you'd like to spend a bit of time with me, working on your mindset, whether that's something to do with your career, whether you want to get that promotion at work, whether you want to improve your relationships, or even if you want to work on your golf mindset, give me a shout and we'll work on that together. In the meantime, thanks once again. Look out for the next episode, which is coming in a couple of weeks. And as ever, be happy, play well, and remember, it's never too late to work on your mindset. Thanks very much.